Welcome to Witch Hunt, the podcast of historical witch trials and modern witchcraft accusations. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
And I'm Sarah Jack. Today, we look back at what we've learned in nearly 2 years of podcasting about witch hunts and harmful practices related to accusations of witchcraft and ritual attacks.
So what have we learned about witch trials?
Witch trials have been around since ancient times. However, witch hunting activity in Europe ebbed in the Middle Ages until new developments shifted perspectives in the later medieval period.
By the 15th century, sporadic medieval witchcraft prosecutions gave way to more frequent early modern witch trials.
This shift owes itself to a number of factors, including growing pains of transitioning from feudal states to modern nations, increased religious tensions, the culture shock of the Renaissance and modernization, and the advent of the printing press, which allowed demonologies and witch trial accounts to rapidly reach ever-growing audiences of readers.
The biggest factor, however, may be a shift in Christian theological attitudes towards witchcraft. As we first learned in episode 3, belief in a satanic pact with witches replaced a belief that witches used their own powers with the belief that the devil gave witches their powers.
While the average person continued to primarily fear what witches could do to them, thoughts of a diabolical connection fueled great fear on the part of the elites, who saw a satanic conspiracy threatening Christendom.
With this belief in a satanic pact in place, witch trials were no longer isolated events, with significant trial activity across much of the European continent and in several European colonies overseas. Beliefs about witchcraft were deeply ingrained in the culture and worldview of the time, influenced by both religious and folk beliefs. Wherever they occurred, witch trials were the result of complex social, religious, political, and economic factors. They were influenced by beliefs, community tensions, and broader societal changes, and were often connected to broader historical contexts, such as political instability or religious conflicts. Factors like neighborly disputes, gender dynamics, and struggles over power often played a role.
Accusers and accused usually came from the same communities, sometimes even families, and accusations could tear apart social bonds.
Economic motivations like land and resource disputes were sometimes behind accusations. However, we would like to point out that land grabbing was not a factor in the Salem witch trials. Instead, disputes contributed by leading to confrontations. When harsh words were followed by misfortune, witchcraft accusations sometimes ensued.
Witch hunts could be sparked by natural disasters, disease outbreaks, or other community stresses.
The accused came from various social backgrounds.
Women were disproportionately targeted in witch trials, reflecting the gender inequalities and biases of the time.
Witch trials had profound and long-lasting effects on individuals, families, and entire communities, often resulting in trauma and economic disadvantages that persisted for generations.
Understanding the history of witch trials is crucial for preventing similar injustices and promoting critical thinking about fear and unfounded accusations.
Studying historical witch hunts provides insights into modern-day witch hunting and scapegoating behaviors.
They serve as a cautionary tale about how fear can lead to irrational actions and unjust persecutions. This is relevant to modern phenomena like moral panics or conspiracy theories. Witch hunts have occurred throughout history and continue to be a problem today in many parts of the world. While most people associate witch hunts with events like the Salem trials, accusations of witchcraft and related violence are still prevalent in places including Africa, India, and Papua New Guinea.
Arrow has said,
"We believe we're talking about tens of thousands of people impacted, and that's based on the data we have. We spent nearly 5 years gathering data from around the world, not just the continent of Africa, but also South America, and to a lot of people's surprise, North America and Europe. Why these are important is that countries where harmful practices like these are rampant, have immigrated and taken the problem with them, because ritual attacks and harmful practices related to accusations of witchcraft is a mentality, it's an issue of a mentality and a system of belief. So that can easily be transported with a person. So across all those countries, and even in the Pacific, Papua New Guinea and the small island states, in the same region, we were able to gather tens of thousands of data. It's monumental because this is data that we pulled together using a small team and just looking through media reported cases alone. That's the tip of the iceberg, we think.
Economic, social, and political instability can fuel witch hunts. Times of hardship, conflict, or rapid change make communities more susceptible to witch hunting behaviors as people look for someone to blame.
Deeply ingrained cultural and religious beliefs about witchcraft and supernatural forces continue to fuel accusations and persecutions. Even in places where formal witch trials ended centuries ago, underlying beliefs that enable witch hunts may remain. These beliefs can be exploited by witch finders or spiritual entrepreneurs who profit from identifying alleged witches.
We've spoken with advocates, legal experts, academics, and diplomats about witch hunts happening in our world today, with episodes focusing on South Africa, Nigeria, Papua New Guinea, India, Ghana, Malawi, and Namibia. Given the scale of the problem, however, we have just scraped the surface and plan to continue exploring our world.
Underlying causes of witch hunts can include witchcraft beliefs and fear of the supernatural, desire to explain misfortunes or find scapegoats, property disputes and attempts to seize land, maintaining power structures and controlling women, and lack of scientific temper. Now we have some good news. Advocates around the world are working toward the effective end of witch hunting.
Some countries have passed laws criminalizing witchcraft accusations or have such laws remaining on the books from colonial times. For example, Ghana recently passed a bill, though not yet signed into law, criminalizing witchcraft accusations. And existing laws against violence and discrimination are being applied to witch hunting cases in some areas.
The United Nations has recognized harmful practices related to witchcraft accusations as a human rights issue, and the Pan-African Parliament has developed guidelines to address these practices. In addition, Papua New Guinea is implementing a sorcery national action plan to provide holistic solutions.
Organizations like the Advocacy for Alleged Witches, founded by Dr. Leo Igwe, work to support victims and raise awareness, while organizations like the International Network Against Accusations of Witchcraft and Associated Harmful Practices were formed to connect global efforts.
In December 2022, Josh and I co-founded a nonprofit organization with Mary Bingham, Beth Crusoe, and Jen Stevenson.
Our organization, End Witch Hunts, is dedicated to raising awareness of modern witch hunts and advocating for their elimination.
In many locations, efforts are underway to promote critical thinking and challenge superstitious beliefs, and community engagement is being used to raise awareness about the harm caused by witch hunting.
Scholars like Boris Gershman have conducted research to understand the prevalence and nature of witchcraft beliefs, and efforts to document witchcraft accusation cases and gather data on the scope of the problem are also underway.
Some organizations provide shelter, legal aid, and rehabilitation services for those accused of witchcraft, and efforts are being made to reintegrate accused individuals back into their communities.
Advocates are working with influential community figures, including political and religious leaders, to change attitudes and practices.
Advocates are using the media to raise awareness and challenge harmful beliefs.
Some countries and international bodies are putting diplomatic pressure on governments to address this issue.
Governments and NGOs are implementing community-based conflict resolution mechanisms to address underlying causes of accusations.
Some programs aim to address poverty and inequality, which are often underlying factors in witch hunts.
The UN has recognized harmful practices related to accusations of witchcraft in several ways.
On July 12, 2021, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted Resolution 47.8 on the elimination of harmful practices related to accusations of witchcraft and ritual attacks.
As the UN itself says, in its Resolution 47.8, the Human Rights Council expressed concern that harmful practices related to accusations of witchcraft and ritual attacks had resulted in various forms of violence, including killings, mutilation, burning, coercion and trafficking of persons, torture, and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment and stigmatization, particularly for persons in vulnerable situations, including women, children, persons with disabilities, older persons, and persons with albinism, and that these forms of violence were often committed with impunity.
This resolution urged UN member states to condemn harmful practices, take all measures necessary to ensure the elimination of harmful practices amounting to human rights violations, prevent witch hunts, and prosecute perpetrators.
And in 2021, the Pan African Parliament released guidelines to member states on implementing national action plans for eliminating harmful practices and other human rights violations.
On February 1st, 2023, the UN's Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights released the Study on the Situation of the Violations and Abuses of Human Rights Rooted in Harmful Practices Related to Accusations of Witchcraft and Ritual Attacks, as well as Stigmatization.
This report detailed the many ways in which harmful practices related to accusations of witchcraft violate human rights.
Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, are another avenue toward implementing policies and procedures to mitigate the crisis.
The United States has long-term commitments to the SDGs for several nations which have ongoing witch hunt crises, including Papua New Guinea and a group of West African countries.
The recognition by the UN, African Union, United States, Papua New Guinea, and others helps to legitimize efforts to eliminate these harmful practices and provides a framework for international cooperation on this issue.
The actions taken so far represent a multifaceted approach to addressing the complex issues of witch hunting, combining legal, educational, social, and economic strategies.
In addition to government entities, much work is being done on the ground by advocates and grassroots organizations in dozens of countries.
We have spoken with people like Damon Leff of the Advocacy Against Witch Hunts, Leo Igwe of the Advocacy for Alleged Witches, and Jordan Alexander of the UK National Working Group on Spiritual and Ritual Abuse.
And we've spoken with many activists in India, Malawi, Namibia, and Ghana as well.
In addition to these local actors, we have spoken to international advocates and representatives of the International Network Against Accusations of Witchcraft and Associated Harmful Practices and the International Alliance to End Witch Hunts.
And the advocates End Witch Hunts and Witch Hunt podcasts have interviewed are just the tip of the iceberg.
The work to be done will be hard and may take some time, but the workers needed to do the job are assembly.
Addressing the issue requires a multifaceted approach, including education, legal reform, community engagement, and challenging harmful witchcraft beliefs. Advocates working to address the harmful practices associated with witchcraft accusations often outline several key strategies and next steps. These strategies aim to protect victims, prevent further violence, and educate communities.
The problem intersects with other issues like gender inequality, poverty, and the lack of education, and addressing these root causes is crucial.
There's a need for more data and research on the scope of the problem globally.
Laws against witchcraft accusations exist in some places, but are often poorly enforced.
Advocates plan to continue lobbying governments to strengthen laws against witchcraft accusations and related violence. This includes pushing for legislation that criminalizes accusations and the violence that often follows, as well as ensuring the protection of those accused.
Efforts will also focus on ensuring that existing laws are enforced. This includes training law enforcement and judicial officers to handle cases related to witchcraft accusations fairly and sensitively.
Education, critical thinking skills, and challenging harmful practices are key to addressing witchcraft accusations.
Advocates aim to expand educational campaigns that inform the public about the dangers of witchcraft accusations and the importance of human rights. These campaigns often involve community workshops, public service announcements, and partnerships with local media.
Programs that encourage critical thinking and scientific literacy are being promoted to reduce the reliance on supernatural explanations for natural events.
Support and rehabilitation for survivors of witchcraft accusations is greatly needed. Survivors of accusations face major challenges in reintegrating into communities due to ongoing stigma and fear.
Establishing more safe houses and shelters for victims of witchcraft accusations is a priority. These facilities provide immediate protection and support for those fleeing violence.
Increasing access to counseling and mental health services for victims and their families is critical. These services help address trauma and support the reintegration of victims into their communities.
Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of Witch Hunt.
Continue to join us every week.
Have a great today and a beautiful next 100 episodes.